Hello, all, and welcome to the Fantasy and Sci-Fi Fanatics podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Coolbaugh. Today, I have me a very special guest, Luke T. Barnett. Luke, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Daniel. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, anytime. I love when I actually saw you. You're the third Facebook person that I saw in an advertisement for either sponsored in some way on Facebook. So I always like when I see someone's advertisement, I save it. I like it for some reason. Or a like page, something like that. And I love it because then they just keep sending me more and more people. So it's nice. I think you're the third in a row author that I've gotten from, a Facebook ad or sponsorship for
Awesome.
some reason. So it's working. Yeah. So I just want to know it's working. So.
That's good.
And actually, the one that I had for you, like I said, was Galactic Core, one of the Galactic Core books. So I am actually, just so you know, I am going to be featuring that on a podcast as well, where I'm going to be talking about different ads that I really liked and why and what was working for them, at least for me as a reader. So
cool, thanks. Yeah, that's awesome, man.
So I'll let you know before that comes out so you can, take a look at that and share that. Hopefully we'll get you some more people that way. So we'll start right in with that first question there, Luke. What has your writing journey been like up until this point?
Oh, interesting. So I wrote fan fictions growing up.
Oh, cool.
Simpsons. I wrote a kind of extensive fan fiction for Final Fantasy 3. And another one that was a crossover between Tomb Raider, Metroid, and Perfect Dark.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, that was a big video game nut growing up. I never finished that fan fiction, but I posted on fanfiction.net. It's actually still there.
Oh, that's cool.
I played Dungeons and Dragons with some friends, and some roommates, and I started writing a short story series based on a couple of characters. That turned into the Kraus and Jade series, which I recently revamped and released. And then one time I was playing as just this plain half-orc barbarian. I said, I'm gonna make this into a book. So I started writing a book, and it took me 15 plus years to actually finish it. But I finally finished it. And from then on, it's been like, okay, I'm gonna be an author. I'm gonna be a writer. I'm gonna start writing books. And so I started writing, and now I've got the 6 books in the Kraus and Jade series. I got the one half-orc book out, and I've got 3 books in Galactic Core, and I'm trucking along.
Yeah.
So it's been fun.
Yeah. That's really cool. I love that you wrote fan fiction for Simpsons. Like that's really cool.
Well, I watched it growing up, and then I don't watch it anymore. But I made a fan fiction. It was Bart had a twin brother they never told him about, and he was like ultra cool.
That's cool.
Yeah.
All right. So if anybody knows the Simpsons, writers or anybody from the show, we need to get Luke's episode on there ASAP.
It is long gone. I don't know what happened.
Yeah, Dia's still there though. That's awesome. That's super cool. We better not see that now anywhere because we know it was Luke T. Barnett's idea first.
There you go. Yeah. Pay me my money.
Yeah, exactly. That's super cool. Oh man, that your conglomeration there with Metro Prime and Tomb Raider. I mean, that's like that just sounds really, really cool. I mean,
I thought there were like
3 perfect things there.
Yeah. So like at the time, it was like late 90s. It was like the 3 like most awesome female characters. And I gravitate towards female characters, so like it's just like combine them into one. Like, how does it work? So it was fun to write. I want to finish it someday, but I have my own stuff I want to write that I can actually make money on.
Yeah. Oh, that's super cool. Well, I do have to say, when I first saw, your profile pop up, I was very jealous, particularly on Amazon, because I was like, oh, here's somebody that's doing what I want to do. Like, I would love to have urban fantasy, and sci-fi, and I was like, oh, that's super cool, that you have a lot going on, at one time. Most people you see, they just kind of stick to one thing. So that's exactly what I want to do, and to me, it kind of was like, oh, this is totally possible, that you can do this type of thing. So it made me feel good in terms of like my, my writing interest. Cause sometimes I get a little bit bored sticking with one thing, and I like to kind of, move about a little bit in terms of genres and things, but
from all I've heard, it is challenging to jump genres.
Yeah.
And really the way I tend to do things in life, which is not on purpose, is I tend to take the most challenging thing to do and then try to make success out of that and realize and wonder why it doesn't work. So my first attempt to make an author career is epic fantasy, which is takes longer to write, costs more to edit, and then I was doing it independently, so I have to pay for everything. So then I realized, okay, space opera sells well. It's shorter. I love sci-fi almost as much as fantasy, so I'll try that. And then went with publishing company. So I got the two. I got sci-fi and I got sci-fi and fantasy there now, and I'm eventually going to move into superhero, but that's down the line.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I have ideas for other random works too. I want to eventually write a Sherlock Holmes mystery.
Oh, that's
Uh,
cool.
I'm actually planning a Jane Austen story for my wife for our 25th anniversary.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, so it's I just like writing. Writing's the thing I love more than doing anything else. It's just so much fun, and I have all these ideas that I want to try.
Definitely know that feeling. My idea book's a lot bigger than my done pile. That's my thing lately. It's like, oh, I just got to finish something and then move on to the next one. I've been trying to do like
Yeah,
focus, but it's hard. Like people always like, oh, I don't know what to write. I have nothing to write. I'm like, do you want one of my ideas? I'm like, I never have that. I've never had that problem. I've had
no.
yeah, like finishing something because then I'm like, ooh, that's shiny, but I'm
Yep.
good at getting the shiny. So
Yeah, Chinese hard to resist.
yeah.
Yep.
That's I was listening to Michael R. Fletcher a lot talk about like I actually asked him at one point. I was like, I'm working on this thing and I have this great idea. He's like, finish the first one. Like, don't do that. The first
Yep.
one. And I have to say, like, it was the best advice besides Paul S. Kemp gave me about not back in the day about not going with the vanity press. So between the two of them, they saved my career. So I'll have to put a forward for them or something. But
That's
yeah, the
awesome.
shiny definitely gets to me.
Yeah.
I'm a lot better now, but
Well, in between the half orc book and I spent the next year writing the next book, but in between that and Galactic Core, I spent like a couple years writing this high school superhero um, novel and part of its sequel. And then I was taking that time to figure out like what I was going to do next, and then finally settled on space opera and just went with that. But yeah, it's that shiny thing, It's like I want to write all these things, and I'll write this for now. I'll write this for now, and there's a point where you should follow your passion, but not where it's going to be undisciplined following. Finish
yeah.
what you start and then move on to your next passion.
Yeah, totally. I wish I had definitely been more disciplined. I have like literally so many stories, like books that like are 30,000, some are 40,000, that have no direction. Like they have great ideas I can go back to, and finish up or, do something with, and then, get a better draft. But yeah, I mean, I'd have like, 6 series done by now if I had just focused more. So I think but I did talk to a lot of authors about that. I think that's like one of the hardest things to do, right? Is like, in terms of not understanding structure, character development, things like that, as you tend to figure out, like you tend to get to a point where you're like, oh, I don't know how to fix this problem. Well, it must just, now I need to go to back to this new idea, or I want to do the new
Oh
thing.
yeah,
You don't want to stop writing,
no,
but I think sometimes it's good to, you know, to
yeah.
stop
Well,
writing. Break.
it's work.
Yeah.
Any work is tough. It's just enjoyable, extremely enjoyable
Yeah.
work. And you're gonna hit a wall sometimes, and you just gotta literally work your way through it. So and and sometimes it is good to take a short break just to clear your mind, whatever. But with the goal of getting back to that thing so you can finish
Yeah.
it and figure out that problem.
Yep. That's like now, like I had a problem yesterday and the day before, and I'm like, well, now I have a 3-day rule where I'm like, I could drop it for 3 days, but then because I find for myself that if I don't pick it up in 3 days, now all of a sudden like a week or two's gone by and I've probably been reading too much, and not getting enough writing or playing a video game or watching TV
Right.
or something, and I'm like, well, then it's harder for me to get back in. So I have my 3-day rule now. I do think you got to find what works for you. I know some people, that, you know, maybe take a little bit longer than that, a little bit less. One of my friends doesn't like to stop writing at all because then he won't write for, a month. And I was like that, but now I feel like I'm more disciplined. And today's my 3rd day. I'm like, I don't even care if it's, 10 words, like I'm going to
Yeah,
have,
yeah.
just so that, the next day, then I find I come back and it's like, it's kind of, it's fresh and it's new, but yeah,
Yeah, I
that's,
find for myself that when if I get stuck on something, I have to either just start writing something and then I'll start flowing, or
yeah,
sit back and just daydream about it for a few days and just kind of mull over it in my mind and figure out what I really want to write, and does that fit in that mindset, or do I need to do something else, and what do I really, and just work it out. And but usually within a week, I usually figure out something to at
Yeah,
least
yeah.
a few steps to move forward. If not, the floodgates opening.
Yeah, yeah. My thing is lately is like if I like I have I'm not big into guns, like I was raised with them and stuff, but I'm not big into them. Particularly like assault rifles, handguns, things like that. Like we had like hunting rifles, and I'm writing this story about a recon Marine that turns into a monster hunter. And so my first novella, I have to write this scene. I kind of got out of it, and I have to go back and add one scene where there's like, stuff like that going on. But now I'm like literally in the heat of it, where I got to know the name of the magazine, all these things, like how many bullets are in the gun, because I do want to appeal to a certain audience, and I'm like, part of me was like, I'm dreading writing these last two scenes because I don't know any of that. But the other part of me is like, well, I'm not gonna have anything to fix or to give to somebody to help me fix if I don't just write it. So tonight, no pun intended, I'm biting the bullet and just putting something down, and then just sending it to somebody to help. But I think that was another thing that for a long time stopped me, was I was like, I didn't know how to do something. But I still believe at the end of the day, having something on the paper, allows you to do, you fix in some way or add in some way, and having a blank page doesn't do anything to help you.
Oh yeah, I agree. So for this third book that just came out today, I have a military sci-fi element within the space opera. There's some chapters that focus on some basically they're called the Armored Corps. They're basically, I don't know if you ever read Galaxy's Edge by Hans Bach and Cole.
Yeah, I love. Yeah, I absolutely love.
Yeah, so they're inspired by them because that series is so awesome. So basically, those guys. I was going to take them out of the series because I'm terrible at research and I've never been in the military, so I didn't want to discredit or foul that up, and one, make a fool of myself, and two, not honor our veterans, because I really appreciate that. And I was just encouraged by the veterans I talked to. Just no, go ahead, just do research that you can and just put it in there. So I went ahead and put it in there. But I totally get what you're saying about the magazines like that. You don't want to screw it up. You want to get it right. Yeah. So yeah, it's just, you just do what you can and put it in there, and then, like I said, just take the feedback and improve as you can.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy the things in the past where I'm like, oh, it's crazy to think of things that stop me from being productive, or stop me from finishing, and I think part of that is like just realizing the things that stopped you,
Yeah.
how to get around them. But
yeah,
I think that's like half the battle, like the old G.I. Joe thing, right? Like no,
yeah,
battle.
yeah.
I think that's exactly the problem, and they teach you that, I think so many misconceptions, that you just are going to sit down, you have this great idea, and it's just going to write itself. And it's like, that's just not always the case. And, I think a lot of people, well, that's like Brandon Sanderson, with his online lectures I loved for BYU, where he was like, sometimes I literally just sit there for 30 minutes and think about a problem and then try to work it out. He goes, sometimes I write, sometimes I delete, sometimes I write, but he's like still doing something, rather letting it sit. So it's interesting.
Yeah.
It really helps me after my friend, he was like, well, you don't do it with martial arts, do you? Like if you have trouble with a kick or something, he's like, what do you do? I was like, well, I practice, and I go and ask somebody that knows more than me, and I practice it again. And he's like, well, yeah, exactly. It's the same with writing. And ever since that, I was like, I don't know why I didn't think of that myself. I was like, wow, like he really helped me out a lot with that. Because I was like, oh, that makes sense. And now I actually use a lot of the same types of ways to solve, two different problems in the same way. And I'm like really glad that he said that to me. But yeah, that's really interesting. So for our audience, what genre or genres do you currently write in? You mentioned that already, but why don't we go into the books themselves? So you did mention your half-orc saga. So let's go ahead and start there. So that is epic fantasy then?
Yeah, that's epic fantasy, inspired by a Dungeons and Dragons character that I had.
Cool.
Yeah. So it's about a half human, half orc who's just trying to figure out where his place is in the world because he's just rejected by both races. And along the way, he tries to follow this god king he's been introduced to, and he's trying to just do the right thing and help those he encounters and not give in to the anger and the hatred that his parent race, the orcs, would have him become. And so that's the first book is him figuring that out and coming to terms with he is half orc. He's not just like this throwaway from the orcs. He's actually, that is his heritage, and going from hating his kin to wanting to save them from themselves. And then I wrote the second book. I'm through in revisions right now, and that's it's him discovering the heritage of the orcs and his friend, and finding out what their legacy was supposed to be, and then trying to restore them to that.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. So it's a big series of self-discovery and of who you are and where you came from and what you're meant to be.
Oh, that's super cool.
Yeah.
Everybody here on the podcast knows in terms of class, I love thieves, and in terms of like,
oh, I love thieves.
I love orcs too, though. It's just like they're two of the most iconic, D&D or fantasy tropes that you could ever have. I think thieves have more fun, and I think orcs have cooler stories. Like that's just.
But you couldn't make an orc thief. That wouldn't really work very well.
Now I want to do it. But the funny thing is David DeGlesh did that, with his half orc series, where like the one brother, it's like they're like the half orc version of Raceland and Cameron from Dragonlance, and they kind of have a bit of a rogue element to them. So
That's
I don't know now.
Yeah. I never read of that series. I've seen it a lot though, because I have a similar title.
Yeah, but, book one. Oh, book one. I've read book one, and I have the other ones on my Kindle. I just been all over, but I read some of his other books that I absolutely love. But that first half orc book was one of the best, just fantasy books like I've ever read, and I mean, did a lot to help me learn about character development.
That's cool.
I want to keep going. Yeah, it was. I mean, it's like more of like the book one was like a low fantasy. Like in terms of like the magic and stuff, but yeah, like the world building he did, and just it was not exactly a big book, but in those pages, I mean, it was absolutely amazing. And
That's
both
nice.
of the brothers the relationships were really good. So
that's cool.
Yeah, I highly recommend them. Yeah, really good.
I might check that out at some point. I don't want to like steal from him on accident, but
yeah, I would definitely finish yours first. Yeah, I made that mistake with with a thief.
Oh, but
a thief or two.
Thieves, in Dungeons and Dragons, my staple is a human female thief. So I've created all kinds, and I just like I like rogues. I think they're a lot of fun, like you said.
They get to do more stuff. They have better.
Kraus and Jade is the main character in there. One of the main characters is it fits in that profile. I actually thought about this about my fantasy characters the other day, and I could pick them out and say, okay, barbarian, rogue, fighter. And then I reached this one character named Liliandra, and it's like, okay, wizard, paladin, cleric, like all this list of stuff that you would fit into. Like, okay, well, it mostly works.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, speaking of Kraus and Jade, so can you tell us a bit about your Kraus and Jade series?
Yeah, so Kraus and Jade is a short story series I originally wrote for a gaming newsletter back when I was gaming and sort of in college. And I just kind of trashed it and recently redid it and revised it and made it a much deeper story. So it's about a girl who's feels stifled by her daily life, and so she goes out to this abandoned keep that was once ruled by a necromancer, and just to prove to herself that she's alive and that there's this supposed curse doesn't actually exist. And she winds up befriending a living gargoyle that still lives there. And through circumstances in the first story, he winds up being her protector. And then the rest of the series is about them going on adventures, discovering who he is, who she is, and then what the secrets of their pasts are, and the secrets of the island, and then of the whole world. And it's interesting because it's almost a negative change arc for her, because I mean, it's a positive change arc, but she has to go down before she goes up, because throughout the series, she's like sneaking around, defying her father, defying the king, doing things she shouldn't be doing. And she comes out triumphant, and she learns lessons along the way. But by the end of the series, the first set of books, she she realizes that she's been going things about the wrong way and she shouldn't be doing this. And now she's got this whole disaster happened, and now she has to do something to fix it.
Mm.
So it's kind of this weird kind of like valley arc type of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, now, when you say short stories, then like what kind of word counts are we talking here?
So yeah, that's a good question. The first one, let me look at the first one, because I know if I get an idea of the first one, then I can give you an idea of the others. The first one was shorter. The second one was like probably the longest one. Let me see here. Concentrate one. So there's 6 stories. Originally, there were 4. The first one is about 9,000 words.
Okay.
So the second one's, I think the second one's about 11,000 words. So I think they're probably more into the novella area.
Yeah.
But I just advertise them as short stories. Some of them are shorter, some are longer. But then I combine them into a compilation, a 1-volume book, and put that up on Amazon too, so people can just get it for 1 volume if they want.
Yeah. It's just interesting to me because that's personally what I want to do with like my prequel novella series. I'd like to see how they do on their own, and then I'd like to put them together. I had talked to a couple of people about advertising that way, and some people had said then when their book actual 1 came out in the series, they were like, well, now I have 4 products instead of 2, and it helped ramp up certain things. Some people maybe were interested in 1 or maybe 2 for the story, or maybe the 3rd one in particular, but not the other ones. But then some people liked all of them and just got the collection. So I just thought that was interesting. So because I've thought about doing that for a few stories, but
yeah, I will say that that was part of what I did between book 1 and 2 of Half Orc. Is tried those and they did not sell well. I think because they're short stories, even though I priced them at $1 each. They did sell, but they didn't sell very well. And that may be because I don't have my audience, maybe because they're short stories. I have heard that short stories don't sell well on Amazon.
yeah.
So it may be a different platform, like maybe Royal Road or one of those other things that are like that might do better on.
Yeah, it's always interesting for like Kindle Vella too. Like I have this one, he's a rogue. He's very rakish.
Nice.
So he's like Sinbad, if you will. And he just gets into so much trouble. And I was like, oh my gosh, I saw this like Arab looking rogue who I was like, that's the guy in my mind. And I couldn't believe I saw like, this digital art. And I wanted him to get in trouble with greater technology, which involves magic. And because rogues are always doing that, and I had it where I was like, oh, this is like the story just came into my mind from like this one digital art. And I had the idea and I was like, oh, I like it. And I saw this one digital artist and I was like, this was so perfect. And even like the diagram of the magic like symbol that the artist had was like something that I saw in my mind. So I immediately took it and ran with it. And I'm almost done with it, but I'm like debating if I want to do it on Kindle Vella, and release it in a few, like 4 parts and then do the next, novella that way and do the same thing. But yeah, it's interesting, because we do have different platforms, like you said, where you can do that. I feel like like some people were telling me, don't know why I'm blanking on the website because I was just talking to someone about this yesterday, but there was a couple of, different things that we were discussing there. But I know people that have done serialized stories that have done really well, 10, like yours, like 10K, for instance, first one. And I got like a miner group, kind of like Firefly, but with mining, and they get into a lot of trouble and a lot of adventures. And I was like, oh, it'd be fun to do each of these as a serialized like 10K or something like that. So it's just, for me, it's always interesting to see, what people have done in terms of that, because you just never, like some people have made 100K doing 10K, and all of a sudden it's like they've done one epic fantasy novel.
It's like how they do that.
So yeah, it's interesting. We're in a very interesting market, so I feel like you never know what's going to work and not work. But
I plan on continuing the series.
I
plan on continuing the series, and but it'll be more of a side project. I even wrote a prequel detailing the character's Jade, the character's mother, and when she encounters the gargoyle.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah,
Oh, that's cool. That's definitely like, I'm gonna have to check that out. It's definitely up my alley. Like, it just sounds very
I think
unique.
you'd like it.
Yeah,
I have
sounds unique.
this story I've been dying to tell. This D&D character that uh, she died, and it was a fun campaign, but when she died, but yeah, she was a human female rogue, but I made her as short as was allowed by the rules. So she was 4'11", but she was human, and she just has like stark white hair and a braid, and she threw daggers. She had like 12 daggers hidden all over her body, and she's just like this very roguish type of personality, just like sarcastic and like, man, I really want to write her.
Yeah.
That's like a future project too. I don't know, maybe she'd be something to do with like a co-write with somebody with their character too, and have them interact. That'd be fun.
Oh yeah. Oh, that would be really cool. That'd be
Yeah.
fun. That'd be really cool. I like the Forgotten Realms books myself. Like, I
Yeah.
want to be the next Wizards of the Coast.
Yeah.
Like, I'm looking at them right now, and there's just so many great characters, and I just tend to typically, not that I even like reading just trilogies necessarily. Like, I love, Dresden Files, Iron Druid Chronicles, Patricia Briggs. Like, I love bigger series, longer series. I just tend to write, in trilogies,
Yeah.
and I don't know, I guess it's just my thought. Like, a duology to me sounds fun, but I feel like I would have to work harder at that than writing a trilogy.
Yeah, I gotcha. Yeah, I just get that way.
Yeah, but like, I like those type of characters like you're talking about. I could easily put them in a trilogy and do something fun. Like, I like the fun, quicker pace, like, not that you can't have, like, the one book I read for Forgotten Realms, I was like thinking it was gonna be Blade Singer. I was like, oh yeah, it's gonna be like a fun little, oh my gosh, like, the amount of emotion that was in 340 pages, I just couldn't believe it. And like, the author just did such a good job, and of course I lost it somewhere on my shelf now, but the author did such a good job so quickly making you like the character, like the main character, and caring about them. And I had to read it 4 times at the start to be like, how did they do that, within 4 pages? And
That's awesome. Yeah, that's the writing there.
yeah, and I just think they had so many great writers, like Elaine Cunningham, R.A. Salvatore, like Bob was amazing, Ed Greenwood. Yeah, like the list just goes on and on. But I like my own fantasy world, and I'm thinking, like, I know so many people that I think could write great stories in it, and we could be the next Wizards. And I feel like a lot of people like me are very nostalgic for that, and I think that's why people like Will White's, the Cradle series, because there's, just keeps going, and it just keeps to a great world. But yeah, that's super cool. That thief sounds really, like, everybody's now has been like, oh my god, the last 5 episodes he's talked about thieves. But that's mostly what I write is rogues. Actually, my year anniversary episode in August is going to be all about rogues and thieves in fantasy and sci-fi.
Oh, that's awesome.
I'm just going to talk about my favorite ones within, different genres. And
yeah, that's awesome.
That.
I definitely tune in for that.
Yeah, I'm like really excited. But and then of course, now we're on your Galactic Core books. So if you could just tell us a little bit about those ones as well. Those ones to me really drew me in first. Like I said, that was the advertisement or sponsored one that I saw on Facebook. So what are the Galactic Core books about?
So those Galactic Core is a ongoing series of it's a space adventure / Western / fantasy, all in space, and it's in the vein of Star Wars, Galaxy's Edge, Guardians of the Galaxy, Firefly. Basically, I took all my sci-fi influences from over the years and jammed them into one series.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, excluding Star Trek, because I'll get that in a minute. But like, so yeah, and I thought, main character is a literal space cowboy, because you got these space cowboy archetypes. I thought, well, I'll just make mine an actual cowboy.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so he's actually what's called a galactic ranger. So it's in a galaxy that's like different from ours. So ours is a spiral galaxy. This galaxy is a ring. It's an oval ring, and the core is at one end of the ring. Oh, and I actually have a picture, I guess it was from a Hubble telescope or something like that, of a galaxy that looks like that.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. So this in a different galaxy is like 300 years in the future, and humanity got there accidentally and now can't get back. And so now they've just kind of developed society, and so it's like a Star Wars type universe. They have hyperspace, and they have blasters. There's no force, but there is this thing called the awareness. which just basically allows people to see things before they happen, but no actual manipulation of objects. But anyway, so there's the worlds and systems are like independent; they govern themselves. There is the Federation, which is a military organization which prevents all out wars from breaking out and generally keeps the peace, and puts down like, great warlords or anything like that that are ravaging planets, whatever. And then there's the Galactic Rangers, which are basically law enforcers that have jurisdiction galaxy wide, and they'll go after criminals for whatever things like murder or rape or anything like that, and they'll bring them to justice. Yeah, so they're basically they're kind of like they're based on U.S. Marshals are now, like U.S. Marshals can go over the U.S. and arrest somebody for a crime in another state. So Doug, the main character, Doug Lancer, is a Galactic Ranger, who's the only one, almost the only one left that's staying true to the Ranger code, as the Federation has suddenly turned into the Empire and are taking over the galaxy. And the Rangers have decided to fold into the Empire instead of them keeping each other in check. Now they're folding into one organization, and Doug's not unlike that. So now he has to survive because they're not paying his salary. Now he has to survive by bounty hunting. And in that universe, a ranger who's turned to bounty hunting is called a cowboy. So throughout the books, everyone's calling him cowboy. So he's literally a space cowboy. So while he's out there, trying to just survive, he runs into an ex-fighter pilot for the Empire who's on the run because she found out a secret and they're trying to kill her for it. So them, along with a sarcastic, racist, gun-toting sentient cat, have to figure out what the Empire's up to and then stop it. That's the first book. And then subsequent books are the aftermath of that, and then other things they need to solve. And they encounter other characters along the way. Characters inspired by Armitage the Third, some other animes that I've watched, like Outlaw Star. Yeah, and then and even Metroid. So it's just a lot of it's a fun sci-fi prompt, and it's interesting because between the first and third books, my writing got a lot better, and I learned a lot of techniques. And I feel like the third book is just really just like I want to say it's this amazing thing, but it's so much better than the first book. The first book's like a fun ride. The third book's like, oh, this is an actual really solid story that you can follow through.
Well, that's cool.
Yeah, it's fun.
So when you say sentient cat, are we talking like a cat man?
No, he looks like a house cat, but larger.
That's cool.
Yeah, and he actually has opposable thumbs only because he had surgery to have opposable thumbs, because the rest of his race doesn't have opposable thumbs.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, but they're also immortal, so they can't die except by fire and by another way that is revealed in one of the books.
That's
it's interesting because that's what I do when I write stuff, like especially when I come up with new races and stuff. I like writing them and then figuring out what they can do and what they're about as I'm writing them. Like, oh, this would be cool, so I put that in there, and then that has implications further on in the story, and it's interesting how it turns the story when you make things up like that.
That's super cool. So when it comes to world building, how do you go about your world building?
I get an idea, just like a couple of concepts, maybe a few, and then I'll just start writing and then develop the world as I write. So like with this series, I knew I wanted hyperspace and blaster bolts spaceships, and I knew I had this weird galaxy, and I knew I had a character that had what's called a singularity gun, which is this thing that can, if you've ever seen Outlaw Star, it's basically Gene Starwin's caster gun. It shoots, depending on the shell, it can do different effects. Cool. And so that's about all I had in there. So I wrote the story, and as I developed the story, I figured, okay, this is an established fact in the universe. So now I'll carry this through the rest of the story. And then as I write some more, I find out, okay, like with the cat, sentient cat, his name is Arch. I didn't have him at first, and I wrote the scene, and it's like, okay, it's kind of a boring scene. Then I saw this picture online of this sentient cat. I'm like, oh, that looks cool. I'm gonna put that in there. And so I put him in there, and then I had to develop, okay, what's his race like? But I didn't sit there and think, okay, what's his race like? Can they do this? I just wrote the story, and then at one point, I spoiler alert. So at the end of the first book, he takes this lethal hit, and it's like, okay, he's dead, And then a couple of scenes later, guess what? I'm alive. He's like, yeah, of course I'm alive. I'm immortal. Don't you know that? What's wrong with you guys? So I just developed that, and then it's like, okay, well, how can he die? And why did a bunch of his race die? And it's like, and that was the thing. It's like I made the scene where he ran off and he was ticked off because the other characters were annoying him. And he goes and reminisces and then just pops in my head, you know what? He reminisces about his planet that's been devastated because he's the only one left. So it's like, okay, that's another world building thing. So this planet, there's very few of him left. So that's kind of how I develop the world building in my stories, just kind of make it up as I go. I'm definitely a pantser. I'm not a plotter. I can't plot for nothing.
I mean, I tried doing like an encyclopedia. I tried doing this. I feel like you just like, there's so many things that start to pop up where you have to think about. But then, once I got writing my first, like I have like this heist that's going on, and I am glad that I had a lot of things done because it made it a lot more exciting. They're going after this sword. They don't know what it does, but they know it's a sword of legend. There's some good swords and there's some bad swords. And, I just realized I was like, oh man, like I don't really need the rest of the geography. I'm like, I really just need this city. And once I just like threw everything else out and I was like, okay, I have what I need to know. I was like, I'm just going to go. And I have to say, like, especially after my draft one, like so many things came out where I was like, oh, now I can world build where it makes more sense. Like I have the city itself that's like, that is designed literally for defense, but it's also designed based off of classes. And there are people, the outer ring is literally like everything else is service to the outer ring. So the poor people are on the outer ring. It's called the gutters. And literally like they just sort through trash to survive. Wow. And it like, I wanted something like that made sense why my characters who lived on the outside were trying to get into the inner rings. And once I just like you said, I just started writing, it's like everything else, really came into fruition. I think a lot of us are still on that old, the iceberg theory, that you need the iceberg before you can, start to traverse the seas. And it's like, I really think, I just want the audience to know in particular, like I spent 14 years doing that stuff, and, here and there. And I just, I have a lot of cool things to draw on, true, but it never taught me how to finish anything. So I like when you said, that you write first. And I found I'm a discovery writer as well, and I try to, plot and do things as much as possible, but it's like when I'm teaching, like I plan out so many things. I guarantee you, Luke, you and I, like my co-teacher, will sit here, we'll come up with the best thing for tomorrow's lesson. I wake up tomorrow, I'll scrap it and pick something else. That's why I get up earlier. My better idea always comes the next day. He probably gets driven crazy because he's like, oh my God, here he goes again. But it always ends up being better as long as we can organize it within the time. So I'm trying to get better at that. But yeah, I definitely think that I'm just a discovery writer. I don't think there's anything wrong with that though,
I don't know. I mean, it backs you into a corner sometimes, and sometimes you just wind up like, okay, now I have to figure out this piece of world building because how are they going to do this? Because I put all these rules in place, and now how do I get them to do this thing? And I just feel like it would be so much easier if there was an iceberg, if you had the plot all planned out. But every time I sit down to plot, no matter what method I use, I'm just blanking completely. It's like the act of writing is what helps me to think that way in order to write the story.
I like how you said that, the act of writing. I feel it's like the same, like, I'm a little older now, so my knees, kind of hurt sometimes before, like when I'm at the start of a martial arts class, and I could easily go home or not go. I always do feel better, and for weeks later, once I do actually go, and do everything. But the act of doing it, actually helps me. And I think that's the act of writing, I think, is a really good way to put it. But sometimes you just gotta get those juices flowing,
Yeah. My mom is a big Louis L'Amour fan. I don't know if Louis L'Amour. Yeah. So
my dad too.
I heard an interview. I had an interview with his son once recently, and he was saying how his dad knew that if he didn't go in there and write every day, that it would be harder to open up those doors of creativity and get those words out.
Yeah, I generally just try to, that's where for so long that's why I have so many, I have stacks and stacks. I have documents started. you know, I got random stories where I got 2 chapters started, 10,000 words, but you know, it's like there were some days where I was like, I just can't figure out this, and I didn't want to not do anything. So I
Yeah.
would just let the words flow. But now I, you know, at times that was detrimental, but at the same time, you know, I have a lot of things I can go back to now. And, you know, if I want, I could literally finish 4 books within, you know, the next like year easily off of just
Nice.
those ideas, you know, but it was at least
Yeah.
something rather than just sitting
Right.
and
Right.
playing video games.
Yeah.
It definitely helps, I think, to keep going. I generally don't take a lot of days off. The fact that I took 2 recently, I think shows you just how tired I was after vacation. But
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, it's really funny. Well, I like that style. I think I'm very similar in that style. So what is one writing tool or strategy that you want to try in the future?
Oh man, that's a good question. Uh I don't know if it's a strategy or a tool, but I really, really like to go write with somebody. I think it'd be fun.
Yeah.
I don't know, a friend of mine, Dean Floyd, he and I started to shoot ideas together for a cyberpunk Legend of Zelda story.
Oh, that'd be cool.
Yeah, it was so much fun, like tossing ideas back and forth and just feeding
Yeah.
off each other. We didn't, and that wound up not going anywhere. But I think that's something I would really like to do. As far as actual strategies, um, uh, I would like I would like to figure out a way to do an unreliable narrator. I've heard that a lot.
Mm. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I don't know that I could do it properly.
Yeah.
I have troubles with logic, so keeping track of things, it's really not my strong suit. I mean, I work very hard to stay consistent in my stories, and I still slip up sometimes. But uh, I don't know if I could do an unreliable narrator and then not get the facts confused.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's a good one. Yeah, I didn't consider that. I actually didn't consider either of those. I've been asked, this is a new question I asked a couple people, and every time I think someone's going to say something, they say something
Totally
completely
different.
different, and then it makes me think, I'm like, dang, I'm like, that was a really good question. Like, somebody the other day said, that I interviewed said going to a writing retreat and
Yes, that would be awesome.
structured. Yeah, like one that's structured. So now you guys got me thinking. I'm like, I need to go to a writing retreat. I was talking with co-writing with a couple of people, and I just haven't found, you know, it's like my wife, like it took me a while to find that good relationship. So I feel like, you know, I've been courting a couple people. Like I definitely want to co-write something, particularly with sci-fi, because I need somebody with the sci-fi mind. I feel like I'm more of a fantasy, you know, minded individual, and I can do the fighting scenes and stuff really well, but some of that other stuff that's difficult. So I feel like that's a genre that I would love to try and co-write, but I
Oh
never
yeah,
remembered
yeah.
that until you said it. So now I'm like, gotta add that to my list. So
Hmm.
yeah, that's awesome. So who is one character that you wish you had written? Like you wish you had written that character first.
Samus Aran.
Oh, that's a good one.
Samus Aran's freaking awesome.
That's a good one.
Yeah, I think I would have liked to have written her. She's just an awesome female protagonist, and
Yeah.
she's got some femininity to her, but she's not like masculine or anything like that. She's just a woman who's just really skilled and really good at what she does, and she's got all these advantages because of her DNA and because of, well, the reason. So I say I wish I had thought of her, thought I've written her first. That's true, and I didn't. So I'm writing her now, and only you know, I have a Samus character in my Galactic Force
Yeah, yeah,
series.
yeah.
Yeah, and she shows up at the end of book 3, and she goes in full on in book 4. It's like, you know, it's like all these characters, like, oh, these are cool, these are cool. I want to put this in my story, but I can't just, you know, rip off Samus Aran. So I've made it different in my Galactic Force series. Her origin's different, her makeup is different, but it's a similar feel. You know, you read it, if you know Metroid, you're like, that's Samus Aran. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah,
Cool.
that's probably the first one that comes to mind is her.
I really like this came up last night for me. So I was glad that I asked you this. I was watching Miss Marvel, the TV show, and one of the guys for the Red Daggers pops up, and he just so reminds me of a character that I've been writing for a while and I want to get right. And I've been trying to find the perfect actor to portray him so I could get more of a visual. And he just acts so much like him, the older version of him at the end of the trilogy. But I'm like, oh, I could definitely see a younger version there. And I was just like, he's so reminded. It's like I tried to find out his name since last night, but it's like the older Red Dagger in like episode 4 or whatever. It's 4 or 5. And I was just like, oh my God, I wish I had written that character. I was like, I kind of did, like you said already without.
Yeah. I've seen, I can't remember who it was. There was some character in some show that I watched. And I was like, that's my character. But it was just like a slightly different version of it. But it's like, yeah, my character was in this universe, it would be that character. Oh, that's cool.
It feels good, right? Because you're like, oh, like, because I really enjoyed it. Obviously, I was like, that's why I wanted to, to write about that character.
Yeah,
really cool. So if you guys see, Miss Marvel, like when she's in a different place and the Red Daggers show up, it's the older guy. Like, that's my guy. All right.
Yeah.
I've been writing about that character in a fantasy setting for years now, and he even does the things with the daggers, and he has some hand-to-hand combat. So similar. He's got the same hairdo and everything. I was just like, wow. So now it's nice because when I have my cover artist eventually, I can be like, yeah, this is the actor, like this is the guy, like, and get a really nice book cover out of it. But
there you go.
Awesome. We were just talking about that, some writing friends and I, a while back. It was a couple weekends ago, actually. We were having a discussion about like who's a character you wish you had written, and they had some very interesting ones that I had not considered before. But one of my friends had wished that he wrote he actually wished that he had written the whole book Lonesome Dove first.
Oh, yeah,
because that's a classic. I actually just bought that for my dad recently. But so which leads us to our next question. So who is one author that when you read them, after you're done reading them, or maybe during, you got to set it down and then you have to go write?
Oh,
like, who makes you want to write?
Probably Jason Anspach and Nick Cole. Their stuff is clean and it's well written.
Yeah.
And I'm not into military sci-fi, but the way they integrate, because usually military sci-fi is full of terms, and it can be very dry depending on who's writing it. But the way Anspach and Cole do it is they integrate the terms so well that it doesn't get in the way of the story of the characters, and the writing is excellent. And it's got that Star Wars feel, and it's just I read their stuff and it's just like, man, I want to write the same stuff. I actually wanted to write in their universe, but I don't have the opportunity to. So maybe someday. But yeah, that's probably the one. It's hard for me to get into books unless I listen to audiobook. But their stuff just sucked me in. It's so good.
Yeah, that first book was just like,
so
good. Actually,
I've listened to like 3 times.
Yeah, we're it's so funny that you mentioned that, because I actually only listen to audiobooks. It's a personal thing. I only listen to audiobooks that I've actually read. I feel like at Hans's, I had a bad experience with a bad audiobook narrator that ruined a really good book for me, and it took me years to go back. And
I get that.
And I just get different things out of reading and then listening to it. It helps me as a reader and a writer to do that in terms of process. But that's one that I did not think of. I was trying to think like, what's something I've read that I want to listen to on audio? And that book one, definitely, I actually read the first 3 like back to back to back. So those would actually be really good ones. But that first book was like, my best friend and I were actually have all the plans when he gets his 3D printer for the armor.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and we have a couple other things that I'm making out of foam. So I think what we're going to do is make the helmets out of 3D printing, and then make the guns and everything else. But yeah, that's actually who we're dressing up as at our first Comic-Con next year. We're trying to go
awesome.
Yeah, to like a bigger one, and we're trying to get everything prepped. So yeah.
Where are you going for your Comic-Con?
We would love to go to San Diego, or beautiful San Diego. I don't know if we're going to be able to swing it, but I would love to. But we are actually next year talking about going to Chicago next summer.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's supposed to be like a really good one. So we were thinking about going there, and then maybe the year after that trying San Diego. But my friend's never been. He's been to a couple of little ones. I went to the Phoenix one, which was absolutely amazing. it was like the year before the what's his name? The Green Ranger got like attacked by some guy. So it was the year right before that. It was very memorable. But I went and like I went and met so many people. That's when Stranger Comics was like just kind of becoming like a thing, and now they're doing a lot better independently. I talked to so many comic artists from the independent community. I talked to some indie authors. I mean, it was really, really cool from a creative standpoint. And
That's
I
awesome.
still have so much art that I have to get like, framed actually the next couple of months because we're redoing my basement. And once my writing space is fully done, and I have everything up, it'll be really cool because I got some really cool stuff from that show in particular.
That's awesome.
But yeah, I highly recommend the Phoenix one. It was really, really good. But yeah, we're hoping to go
Yeah.
to Chicago next summer. So
I've never been to a Comic-Con, and I just haven't had the money, and now I have family, it's hard to get away. But
yeah.
it's on
I
my
like
list of things to do.
Yeah, well, I like even like the smaller shows. Like I like ones that you're like $10.
Yeah.
Are the one in my town, like in Ithaca, like there's it's at the college. It's not exactly big, but I'm at like 5 or 6 creators, that I'm gonna have on the podcast at some point for comic books really soon, probably for the spring. And I talked to one guy that develops his own games. Board games like 5e content, but independent stuff like that. And
That's cool.
yeah, it was nice. I met like 5 indie authors, which was really cool. One of them is like really big. Not gonna say her name because I totally blanking on her pen name. But I know people would know her on TikTok in particular and Twitter. I had no idea I knew her on both areas. She was like really big. And I was like, oh, that's cool. I just met you randomly at a con. She's like, yeah, we're already like friends on here and follow each other. So it's cool. But yeah, it was neat. It feels good to talk to creators and like this is great, but talking in person is just so much more fun, and I'm kind of like addicted to them now. So just like we have a lot of smaller shows near me, so it's nice. I don't have to pay $55 to
Right.
I think we paid $75 to get into the Phoenix Comic Con. That was 8 years ago. So, I can only imagine what some of them are now. And that's like my buddy and I, we're saving for San Diego because we've been talking about it for years. But
That's awesome.
yeah, I highly recommend if you guys, if anybody online too, can get to any of the smaller shows. I've met some great artists and some different people just around my area. And again, it's nice to talk to people. I almost did a graphic novel with a guy actually that was around here, and we were discussing, and I had a Diablo style like type story with these 2 veterans who kind of had like an on and off again romance over the years and settle in the same town. And then one of them's like a blacksmith. He's like a big warrior. He's the local blacksmith. And then she's like the local healer. And then their old thief again, old friend comes into town, and they think he's there for a visit, but he's there to actually steal this item for their like this new warlord. And he's like, yeah, guys, we're gonna be back on top. And he goes down there and unleashes all these undead, was like a Diablo type thing. And I think it'd be a really cool graphic novel, like particularly black and white. But the pandemic happened and everybody's shifted. So one of these days though, or maybe I'll just do the novel for it. But
there you go.
Yeah, it's cool to talk to different people about their ideas. And I love art. I was originally going to be an illustrator, so
that's
art
cool.
Always talks to me,
Yeah, me too.
But, for that last one there, though, do you have any promos, news, updates, or current projects you'd like to share with us?
So Galactic Core Book 3, The Dark Weight of Justice. It's the 3rd book in the trilogy. So it completes the weapon ship arc. That just dropped today. So definitely go check that out. Of course, I got my other books going on right now, and I'm working on Galactic Core Book 4, working on revising Half Orc Book 2, and that's what's in the works right now. Nothing, a whole lot going on. Just trying to get the Galactic Core series off the ground. I really want to make this one a success. I mean, I know it's not going to be as big as Star Wars, and that's fine, but as long as it can be its own thing and have a fan base, that's my goal, and I would like to bring in other writers to write in the same universe too. I think it'd be a lot of fun.
Yeah. Well, you never know. Star Wars wasn't Star Wars until it was Star Wars. So.
That's true. Yeah.
Star Trek, same thing.
Right.
And it's funny the the Galaxy's Edge guys, same thing. They were one of the first ones that I heard talk about the 10K. Or if you can get a solid 10K, fans going. who are constantly with you, and that's how you build that fandom. So there's somebody actually just recently released a book the last 2 years, excuse me, about that 10K. Thank you. About that 10K. So I always think about that with the series in the back of my mind. But I think a lot of people, who have done well have done well. It looks like they're like crazy amount, right? But I think it really comes down to that 10K. But
That's cool.
bless you. Apparently I'm allergic to being done talking about writing, which is a good problem to have. But well, Luke, thank you so much for coming today. Like I said, I love when I can get a hold of somebody, talk them on social media, and convince them to come on, and just talk about their books and their writing. So it was a real pleasure to talk to you today. If there's something else I can do, you just let me know, and we'll help you out. So
yeah, cool. Thanks, man. I appreciate you having me on. It's good to talk to the writer. So
yeah, anytime you want to talk about something, or there's something on your mind, or you want to discuss whatever, I love talking about it. My wife doesn't want to hear any more about writing. I don't think my friends do.
I know what you mean.
Yeah, so and she's like, oh, just go talk to those people. I'm like, yeah, that's fair. But yeah, I just want to remind our audience, don't forget to check out Luke's socials in the description below. And as always, please make sure for any author, but particularly indie, that you are going and reviewing those books, because then again, that's how people are, going to see their books, and that's going to help them with more sales. And, then we get to read more great things and, have them on the show and figure out what's going on with their lives and their writing. So it makes it fun for everybody. All right, Luke. Well, I hope you have a great rest of the day. I'll be, getting a hold of you for this episode and some other things on social media. But other than that, I hope you and your family have a, great rest of the day. And, hopefully I'll talk to you soon, my friend.
Hey, too. Thanks, Daniel.
Yep. Have a good one.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.